Welcome back to another edition of DMV Autocross Podcast. I'm Brian Garfield, and with Dustin Grubbs, we're going to talk to you about a special day, Groundhog Day. Now, not that special in the real world for autocrossers, except for the fact that we start talking about how long winter is going to go and how it's going to affect the beginning of our season. So we don't need to talk about what the furry little thing saw this morning. We're going to go to somebody who's got better accuracy than a groundhog, Alan.
Hey Brian, hey Dustin, it's Alan at the Weather Terrace here at Parsimonious Racing HQ, and I have a special guest for you guys today. It's not a groundhog, no, it's a cone hog. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we're going to roll with it. So anyway, on the grounds here at Parsimonious Racing HQ, we have a very special guest. He's hiding right under the equipment trailer. Let's see if he's going to help us out with our little prognostication thing. Hey buddy, what do we got here? What we got there? Hey, don't be shy, come on buddy, come on out. I know he's got an important task here today. We're gonna put him out here because it's out in the middle of the yard. We don't do this at the crack of dawn like those guys in Pennsylvania. So what do you say, buddy? What do you say? Look at this right here. We see Kona Tony Phil. How do I do this to get all this in my picture? Well, I don't know. There it is, though. There it is. He sees his shadow. You know what that means? That means 6 weeks of winter. That's not great because some of us like to get spring going and get our car stuff going. On the other hand, 6 more weeks of winter means 6 more weeks that I can not get the stuff done on the cars that I've been wanting to get done since last November. So I guess it's a good news, bad news situation. We have a little more downtime before the season gets going. It's just that it's still going to be winter, so it's still going to be cold while we're out there trying to put wings and things on cars. And nobody likes working on cars when it's cold, especially in a tiny little garage, and then you have to do stuff out in the driveway. So I guess that's all the news that's fit to print here from Parsimonious Racing HQ. I think we're going to take our little cone buddy here, and he can go right back into hiding again because he's giving us bad news. So back under the trailer you go, boss. All right, so Alan's with us now, and let's talk about what you just saw in respect to how it really affects us as opposed to some furry animal or some orange cone being drug out from underneath the trailer. When we start our season in March, I mean, what are we dealing with most of the time?
Cold temperatures. I know for last year it was just trying to get the tires to warm up at all. And, you're also, do I take my all seasons? Do I take my race tires? What pressures am I going to do? Is there any amount of moisture? If there's any amount of moisture and it's below 40, take your all seasons and just knock the rust off with those.
I think sometimes people forget that a lot of these tires we use, whether it be a race tire or a competitive street tire, those competitive street tires particularly are still summer tires, right? They're hard. They don't get squishy when it's that cold out. So I think that's important to talk about is dealing with maybe air pressures or that sort of thing that's going to change so dramatically in these colder temperatures, which mid-March can be, right? I mean, what do we usually see in mid-March?
40s, if that.
Right. I mean, if we're in the 40s, I mean that's not even good for these. Some of these tires are supposedly will crack sometimes in those temperatures, so we don't even want to have them out of the garage when they're like that. And then of course you add in the effect of rain on top of that, which will never let anything heat up, right? So what do you guys do to try to deal with those temperatures, or what changes do you make?
Well, I employ a tire warmer whose job is to take that first run, take a bullet for the team, come back, tell me how miserable the car is, and then I get to go out on reasonably warmed up tires, so at least I get a decent first run in.
Yeah, there you go. For me, I don't think it really helps, but maybe drive to the event on the tires that you're going to use. Just maybe you run first group and there's a little bit of residual heat in there. Last year, my first event, my only good time that tires were nice and hot was an immediate rerun. No timing for my run one. I got a rerun, got a good time. I could not touch that time for the rest of the day. I think it's 38 degrees last year, mid-March, for my first event.
Wow.
So yeah, that's where, do I take my all seasons? Do I take a summer? It's sometimes a toss-up. You can't get heat into them.
What you were saying, Alan, is have somebody else there with you. It's about the best thing you can do, right?
Yeah, like I was the tire warmer for the last few years with Trevor's car, and yeah, those first runs were always bad. Like you throw it in that first corner, you just feel the front end push. It's like, oh, well, this is not going to be fast, but it gets better, and then you get to a point where you get to put the shoe on the other foot, and now it's Kate's problem to throw it in that first corner and have the car just push eternally.
So you found somebody else to drive first for you then.
Yes. It's a privilege of being the car owner.
So,
except she's the car owner. Don't tell her.
So what Alan's saying is the car wouldn't turn initially when those tires are cold, right? And that's a rear-wheel drive car. My car is the same way. It was horrible. It doesn't do anything in that first turn. What happens to you, Dustin, in the front-wheel drive car?
Well, one of two things. Terminal understeer, because you can't get any heat into the fronts, so same as Alan. Or since you're working those fronts, they get a little bit of heat, so they start working, but then the rear just comes right on around. And you're trying to catch it with throttle, but then your front tires aren't really hot enough to pull you out of anything. So you're just along for a ride.
Yeah. As far as what we're going to do to prepare for a cold event, aside from the tires, what would you suggest in terms of preparation?
If you have tire blankets, bring the tire blankets. They make a sizable difference in how the tires react from run to run.
Now, if somebody doesn't know what we're talking about when we say tire blankets, what are the tire blankets, or what can they be?
Oh, you can make them out of like the pipe insulation or the sheets of the silver insulation of Home Depot, or there's companies that actually are making them that you can get them from Steve Fair in down Virginia. He makes them, and they're basically just insulated covers that go over. They cover the face of the wheel and they go all the way over the tread of the tire, and they keep the heat from escaping through the wheel. And it helps if you get the brakes nice and warm. That'll help keep some heat in them. And in the winter or in the cold, warmer tires are definitely happier tires.
For sure. And I mean, quite honestly, you could use anything. You could use blankets, like a furniture blanket. I mean, it's not the best option because you're hoping your tires can get sticky enough and you don't want the blanket sticking to them or anything. But it's not usually going to be the case. So maybe a furniture blanket or cardboard for that matter. You technically could make them out of cardboard. Now, you're not trapping the heat very well, but you're doing something more than letting it escape, right?
Like I've seen people use those sheets of insulation, and they'll just wrap the whole car in that. So it keeps any of the heat from escaping out from under the car. Imagine as a single driver, it's a real pain in the neck to deal with, but I guess it works.
Now, I thought at one point they made that illegal. I thought, at least with the SCCA, I thought they made that illegal. But
I think it's okay, but you can't have them on while the car is running.
That's it. Yeah. I think that's what they said. They said because the whole point was people would just wrap the whole car like that, leave the car running, and you've got this trapped heat all the time on the tires. So what about clothing? What about prepping for the day?
That's what I was going to bring up. I'm always the idiot who's freezing at his workstation in thin shoes, no sweatshirt. The sun's not out, and I'm just sitting there for an hour and a half, freezing. So yeah, dress warm.
Yeah.
And bring plenty of water too. Even though it's cold, you can get dehydrated.
Yeah, I mean, we teach at the level 1 school. What I always tell people is whatever the temperature is going to be, go 10 degrees in the lesser preferred direction, and assume you're going to stand in it for 8 hours because that's just something that's going to happen. You're going to be out there all day long, and hopefully the sun comes out and hits the black top and heats things up for you a little bit. But otherwise, if it's 30 or 40 degrees, you're standing in that all day. In a lot of cases, you're not running, you're standing, so you're getting colder even easier.
I've started even taking snacks out to my station.
Yeah. I mean, you got to have stuff with you because it's going to be kind of uncomfortable out there. So
try to take maybe a thermos of something hot.
Yeah.
Or you're out there and hoping people hit cones so you have something to do.
Yeah.
You say, give me an excuse to run.
One of the things that I like to keep, even on a cold day, keep working is like a pyrometer, because I can monitor the tire temp, the air temp, and the surface temp. And if nothing else, I'm getting data for future events. So, for example, we had a November event, and I found that, when I was on the Nankangs, a tire that takes some heat, the previous event, I had gotten the tire up to about 135 degrees, and that was a good temp for the tire. And then on a slightly colder day, not much colder, but slightly colder, I could never get the tires above 105, and they didn't work at all. And so you can kind of make those data points that okay, this tire is no good when the temperature is 50 or 55 or 60 or the surface temp is 70 degrees or less. I mean, when we speak about surface temps, they're usually easily getting up to 90 or 100, right? I mean, they're not usually in the same as the air temp, or even only a little bit more than the air temp, because it's a dark surface. They're usually much higher than the air temp, especially with the cars running across it. And in this particular case, the surface temp was 70 degrees on a 60-degree day, which just tells you it's not getting very warm, and that's temperature that's not getting into your tires. So keeping track of those things with a pyrometer, whether it be a surface, a laser pyrometer or a probe pyrometer, can do a lot of good for those certain circumstances.
If you have downtime before you actually make your competition runs, like you're running in the second heat, but you're not working the first heat, I don't suggest doing this in a way that endangers the general public, but you can take your car out onto the street and get a little heat in the brakes and a little heat in the tires before you come to grid, and that might get you, might make your first run a little less miserable.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because
I can add to that real quick and do like the little Danny Kago. When he used to own my car, a Civic, a front wheel drive, he would take the rears and put them on the fronts and go take a quick lap, come back and hot swap front to rear tires. So now my rears have a little bit of heat for that cold day.
Yeah. No, I think you can, especially when you consider the circumstances, if you were trailering or something of that sort, or bringing the tires to site. I think what people forget about sometimes is, let's say those tires were out overnight and, it got down to, I don't know, in this case, 30 degrees, let's say, right? Not great to keep your tires in that condition. But anyway, you bring the tires to the site, you mount them up to the car, they haven't been driven on. The point is, just a short drive, not aggressive, just driving down the road, getting heat in the brakes and that sort of thing. That will at least bring the tires up to, say, 50 or 60 degrees. And that's way better than 30 or 40. So you don't have to be aggressive with it. You just have to do something where you add some heat to it. And I think that's a good idea. If you're not working right before you run, you go out and you drive around on them. Again, doesn't need to be aggressive. It just needs to be driving down the road, going through some turns, braking, accelerating, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a great idea.
The other fun one I've seen, I saw, it was a G Street or H Street car. It was up at Finger Lakes a few years ago. And the car the back of the car was on jack stands. And it had the two rear tires in the front seat of the car with the windshield facing the sun, like it's a little sunroom there. These guys get desperate. I don't know how you do it, Dustin.
Yeah, I have seen our own Andres Rodriguez do that at Nats. Take off the tires, throw them in the car, heat full blast.
I think the big thing is, and we used to do this with the kart tires all the time. We would roll the karts to grid with no tires on them, and the cars would be sitting in, at Nationals, we'd be in a rental car, and the rental car the heat would be blasted, like to as hot as it'll go, and you just leave the car running. But again, the key was always that you couldn't be doing that right before you ran. There's a certain point where you're supposed to be in grid, and at that point the tires have to come out, be mounted up, and be ready to go. Car needs to be ready to go. So, but yeah, there's a lot of tricks like that, and I think it's important to understand how much you can help them by having a tiny amount of heat in them, and also being aware that you need heat in them, in these circumstances. So and being prepared for the event, whether it be, rain or whatever, the gear, making sure you've got everything you need to stand on the course working or even in the elements while you're driving. In my case, I'm in a permanent convertible, so I don't have a choice there if it's cold out. But, well, guys, thanks for joining me today. And it was a great conversation, and look forward to more in the future. And, happy Groundhog Day to you.
Yes, it was a great day.